Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that somewhere along the way, you became a person you never planned to be. Not a completely different person, just a slightly different version of you. Maybe there was a version of you who took the job you were afraid to apply for. A version who called someone back before it was too late. A version who started working out, went back to school, moved across the country, saved the money, ended the relationship, or simply had the courage to say, "This isn't the life I want anymore." That version of you never disappeared. It simply stopped being chosen. And that is one of the strangest things about being human. Your life can change dramatically without a single dramatic decision. Sometimes it happens through hundreds of tiny choices that barely feel important when you make them. 5 more minutes in bed, 1 more episode, 1 message you decide not to send, 1 opportunity you tell yourself you'll take next year, 1 uncomfortable conversation you postpone, 1 dream you keep alive by saying, "Someday." And then one day, you look around and realize that all those small decisions have quietly built a life. The unsettling part is that you usually don't notice it happening, because the human mind doesn't experience life as a giant sequence of life-changing decisions. It experiences it as a series of moments. And in each moment, the easiest choice often feels like the most reasonable one. Stay where you are. Do what you already know. Choose what feels good now. Deal with the future later. Psychologist Daryl Bain proposed a fascinating idea called self-perception theory. When our internal feelings aren't completely clear, we can sometimes infer who we are by watching what we repeatedly do. In other words, your behavior doesn't just express your identity. It can help create it. Think about that for a second. You don't always become confident and then start acting confident. Sometimes you repeatedly do something difficult, survive the discomfort, and eventually your mind begins to recognize a new pattern. I guess I'm someone who can do this. The same thing can happen in the opposite direction. You avoid something once because you're scared, then you avoid it again, then again. Eventually, the story changes. I'm just not that kind of person. And suddenly, a temporary behavior has become an identity. That is how an almost invisible decision can become a permanent part of your life. But there's another problem hiding underneath all of this. You are constantly making decisions for a person you cannot see. Your future self. The person who will wake up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And psychologically, that future person can feel strangely distant. Research on future self continuity suggests that when people feel more connected to their future selves, they are more willing to make choices today that benefit them later. When the future self feels vivid and real, tomorrow becomes harder to ignore. But when that future version of you feels like a stranger, something strange happens. You start spending that person's time. You spend their money. You borrow their health. You sacrifice their opportunities. And because they aren't here to complain, the transaction feels harmless. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow has a way of becoming next Monday. Next Monday becomes next month. Next month becomes next year. And eventually, the person who was supposed to become you exists only as an idea. This is why regret can feel so strange. When people look back at their lives, they don't only mourn what happened. Sometimes they mourn what never happened. The career they never pursued. The relationship they never repaired. The city they never moved to. The person they could have become. Psychologists sometimes talk about these possibilities as counterfactuals, mental versions of reality, built around the question, what if? And your brain is remarkably good at creating alternate timelines. You can almost see them. There is a version of you sitting in a different apartment, a version walking into a different office, a version standing beside a different person, a version who made a different decision on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. And the haunting part is that the decision probably didn't feel important at the time. That's the illusion. We expect life-changing moments to announce themselves. They usually don't. Nobody rings a bell when you're making the decision that will define the next decade. There is no cinematic music when you choose comfort over growth. No warning sign when you stop trying. No notification telling you, this moment matters. Most of the time, it just feels like Tuesday. And that's why habits are so powerful. Research on habit formation has shown that repeating a behavior in a consistent context can gradually increase its automaticity. The process isn't instant, and it varies from person to person, but repetition can make actions increasingly automatic. So imagine 2 people standing at the same starting line. They don't need dramatically different personalities. They don't even need dramatically different goals. They simply need slightly different repeated behaviors. One reads a few pages every night. The other scrolls for 20 minutes. One makes the difficult phone call. The other keeps postponing it. One saves a small amount of money. The other spends it because it's not that much. One spends an hour learning something new. The other spends that same hour consuming something they won't remember tomorrow. None of these decisions seems powerful enough to change a life. But that's exactly why they are powerful. Because they repeat. And repetition creates direction. Direction creates momentum. And momentum